Mrs. Sarah Guthrie, granddaughter of Woody Guthrie.
As I was walking that ribbon of highway, I saw above me that endless skyway. I saw below me that golden valley. This land was made for you and me. Let's sing it together. This land is your land. This land is my land. From California to the New York Island, from the Redwood Forest to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me. Oh, I've roamed and rambled, and I follow my footsteps through the sparkling sands of her diamond deserts, and all around me a voice was sounding. This land was made for you and me. All at once. This land is your land. This land is mine. To the New York Island, from the Redwood Forest to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me. There was a great high wall there that tried to stop me, and on the wall it said no trespassing, but on the other side it didn't say nothing.
Boston Red here on the 13th of November 2019. The title of our episode today is Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, otherwise known as the DECA program. And we'll look at DECA from a number of sources here. We'll use the Los Angeles Times, the Washington Post, and the New York Times here also. But we'll look at the friend of the court's brief. That's how we'll start this off. And, oops. Here we go. Anyway, this is a friend of a court brief from the American Medical Association, the American Medical Student Association, I'll just name a few here, the American Nurses Association, the American Psychiatric Association, Public Health, American Public Health Association, the Indian Physicians Association of Schools and Programs of Public Health, the Association of Allied Health Professors, the Association of University Programs in Health Administration, the California Medical Association, just to name a few, Greater New York Hospital Association, the National Council of Asian Pacific Islander Physicians, the National Hispanic Medical Association, National Medical Association, and so forth and so on here. The Society of General Internal Medicine here. I didn't see the National Medical Association, which is an African American association. I'm not certain about that. I'll have to look it up later. But let's get to the summary here. This is an American Curie brief, a friend of the court's brief. The American Medical Association is a non-profit education association whom members include 154 accredited U.S. medical schools, nearly 400 major teaching hospitals and healthcare systems, 80 academic and scientific societies. It was founded in 1876, and it represents faculty members of 173,000 and students and faculty members. Medical students, almost 90,000 of those, and so forth, where they are. And they have standing here. We go to the source so we could, they go on to say, if DECA is rescinded, however, almost none of these people would be able to serve the American public in their fields. Let me just go up. This is page 4. Let me see if I can get up here a little bit. Start this off. Okay, summary of the argument. We'll get this. The law is clear that the government cannot rescind a long-standing policy without at least a minimal serious consideration considering the relevant interests that would be disrupted by such a change in course. Yet, in this case, the government failed to make any serious effort to consider any of the substantial remnant interests affected by the recession of the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, the DECA program. This is particularly true with respect to the health sector, for which the avoidance of unnecessary harm is a guiding principle. At this moment, an estimated 27,000 healthcare workers and supporters, staff, who depend on DECA for their authorization to work in the U.S. Amongst those 27,000 are nurses, dentists, pharmacists, physicians, assistant home care aides, technicians, and others. The number also includes 200 medical students, medical residents, and physicians who depend on DECA for their eligibility to practice medicine. If these trainees and physicians retain their work eligibility, each year could care for an average of between 1,533 and 4,600 patients a year. Together, over the course of their career, they would touch the lives of 1.7 to 5.1 million U.S. patients. Now, these are young people brought to the country by their parents, which could be legal or illegal, but they know nothing basically other than their socialization in the U.S. If DECA is rescinded, however, almost none of these people will be able to serve the American public in their fields. This action would therefore nullify the substantial and long-term investment that DECA recipients, education institutions, and the public made in educating and training of these recipients to provide needed health care to the nation. Their loss would have a potential devastating effect. It would take a decade or more to educate and train a new physician. Now, this is very important here in training of a physician, as it is in all phases of so-called knowledge work. But this is not only knowledge work, but this is the practical application being a doctor. A healthcare professional, institution, organization, amicus knows that the resources to competently train capable nurses, physicians, nurses, and other medical and public health officials are subject to a substantial limitation. Each year, each dollar that a medical school spends to train one future physician or other medical caseworker is a year or dollar that's not spent training another. The decision to expend vast amounts of time, money, and effort in education and training DACA recipients in the healthcare sector was thus made in the reliance on the expectation that such individual would be able to serve the public once he educated and trained. Rescinding the program and negates all of that substantial time and money effort. There's been a long prevailing rule or standard in equity court that actually comes also from the common law when you have an economic interest. These people definitely have an economic interest, but what this amicus brief is saying, that the nation as whole, in other words, the United States has an economic interest here. Nor is this country prepared to fill in the loss that would result if DECA recipients were excluded from the healthcare workforce. The number of physicians in the U.S. has not kept pace with our growing aging population and a commensurate increase in patients needing care for a variety of chronic health care conditions like myself. It is essential that in the next 11 years, the country will have between 46,900 and 121,000 fewer primary and specialty care physicians that's needed. Shortages in other healthcare professions such as mental health, dentistry, and nurses are worsening as well. In fact, in Rhode Island, they had to train people in their ERs a couple of years back to do dental work. These shortages will be felt more keenly in medically underserved areas such as rural settings, poor neighborhoods, and precisely the areas in which DECA recipients are likeliest to work. A risk of a pandemic also continues to grow since infectious diseases can spread around the globe in a matter of days due to increased urbanization and international travel. These conditions pose a threat to the American health security, its preparedness for and ability to withstand incidents with public health consequences. To ensure health security, a new adjective being used here, the country needs a robust health force, and rescinding DECA would, however, deprive the public of a domestically educated, well-trained, and otherwise qualified health professionals. Healthcare professionals that could provide education relying on their ability to continue to work in the U.S. as healthcare professionals. Now, the national service, that is in the UK, in Britain, or England, or whatever, they rely very, very heavily on physicians trained in other places, particularly in India. We have a lot of Indian physicians here. Our cardiologist is from Delhi. Anyway, both of them. DECA, on the basis of a cursory and conclusionary analysis that failed to consider the real world effects, the government ignored the significant reliance interests of the U.S. healthcare profession, schools, and medical centers. Agencies cannot change policies without fairly addressing the reliance interests. Under the Administrative Procedures Act, that was, I believe, 1965, courts must set aside agency action that are arbitrary, capricious, abusive of discretion. That standard requires an agency to examine relevant data and articulate a satisfactory explanation for its action. That's Motor Vehicle Association, the U.S. versus State Farm Mutual Auto Insurance, Inc. That was a 1983 case. An agency acts arbitrarily and capricious, if it fails to consider an important aspect of the problem it is addressing. Whereas here, an agency considering reviewing or rescinding an existing policy, one important aspect of the problem, a State Farm 463 U.S. at 43, is the possibility that the segment of the public may have ordered their affairs in reliance on existing rules. The court must make clear that in such circumstances, an agency must at the very least display awareness that it's a changing position and take into account any serious reliance interests fostered by a prior policy. FCC versus Fox television stations. The agency cannot act in spite of these interests without providing a reasonable explanation. To ignore such matters violates the Administrative Procedure Act. The court has applied in Fox standard to inform policy statement in Incendio Motorcars LLC versus Navarro. That was a 2016 case. The court invalidated a regulation but classified certain employees as subject to federal wage and hour laws. But because the regulation converted a prior informal policy statement, excluding those the same employees, the court held that the agency needed to provide more than a summary discussion before issuing the rule. In other words, we'll move right on here through this. You'll get what's going on. As the court below recognized the government's decision to end DECA demonstrates no true cognization of the serious reliance of interest at issue. This is NAACP versus Trump, a 2018 case. Respondents have raised this issue in broad terms. Board of Regents, University of California. A failure shown below. The issuance is substantial and far-reaching. Healthcare schools, hospitals, institutions have a significant long-term investment in time and money in the training of DECA recipients. The investments were made amidst severe shortages of trained healthcare workers. That's particularly correct in California with the Latinos there and people of color expanding. Loss of a DECA status for healthcare trainees and professionals would nullify substantial investments made by schools and other institutions and recipients to public significant determined. Recipients depend on DECA for work eligibility. Very important point there as we move through this as quickly as we can. Medical schools, teaching hospitals, and other educational and healthcare institutions expended vast amounts of time, money, and other resources in reliance on DECA. Big headline here, won't go into relevant situations there. Pala versus Doe, that's was a 1982 case. U.S. states without legal authorization as children had been able to benefit from public, this K through 12. Anyway, a lot of arguments here, and as we look at these Mika briefs, they usually bring out this. DECA changed its calculus as related to one department, as related by one department chair. It offers a route to work permits for recipients. In the autumn of 2013, the first DECA recipients entered medical school. That was, 6 years ago? And the number of DECA applicants and matriculants steadily increased as of 2019. The country had reported admission policies that included DECA recipients. These schools include the Upper Medical School at Brown University, Georgetown, Harvard, Loyola University, the University of Michigan State University, Yale University, and so forth and so on. A lot of very impressive colleges involved here. They mentioned a case of somebody named Dr. Ambrosio, talent and drive, along with DECA extended work and authorization, inspired the medical school to admit her. Stitch Medical School. She has since earned her MD and is now in the first year of her obstetrics and gynecologist residency. So she has to remain in that. All money is lost, and she'll have to go somewhere else. Which there are other medical schools in the world that will take on these people, and they'll have the trained positions, and the U.S. will have zilch. Hospitals in the U.S. have invested approximately $5 million in training of medical residents with the DECA. Now, that's just the DECA part of the puzzle here. Healthcare professional schools invested in the training of DECA people. This is repeated over and over because of the type of brief it is. And DECA recipients rely on their eligibility work when they decide to invest their own time, effort, and resources in a health care career. Yeah, it's devastating. I mean, it's devastating for any child that has grown up here, that came here at age 1 to 5. Many of these young people did. Some a little older, but most very, very young. And the U.S. is all that they have literally known as human beings. Rescinding DECA would nullify these investments and worsen a shortage of healthcare professionals. That is ongoing. Now, this is a big problem, this whole immigration scenario. You have states like Texas that are cutting back in education funds, and various other states are putting more of the funding on the students. And the students, of course, as Bernie is correct, can't pay for the education services. The shortage is nationwide. Texas, for example, 1,200 healthcare professional shortage there that has been designated by Health Resource and Service Administration there. And nationwide, there are 6,782 dental types there, with 56 million people affected. Hematologists, oncologists, and pulmonologists. Cardiologists, a shortage amongst those. Oh boy. And let's see, 5,000 areas in the U.S. with shortage in healthcare professionals. That's more and more is happening in rural communities, not healthcare professionals. Not only that, medical centers and clinics themselves have disappeared. So people are forced literally to ride on emergency air transportation to get literally to the nearest hospital. Period. So in other words, they exacerbated that problem. And this is the other side of immigration. When your schools are not producing the people, there's problems. In 2017, the state of Arkansas Board of Nurses announced that it would no longer license DECA recipients to press. The state legislature quickly reversed course in light of the impact of lost trained nurses. Now this is Arkansas. The so-called land of opportunity suffered from a nursing shortage. In states like California, they usually rely upon, or did rely upon, nurses trained in the Philippines because they use the same textbooks as in the U.S. to supplement for many years nurses when the salaries were paltry at best. Healthcare shortage in Nebraska, Indiana, Nevada, and this is something that they need to make more accessible to the public, so the public really understands what's happening here. That they'll have, as the sports people say, skin in the game. Period. State investments are made in the context of what was known and projected about shortages, and these things are well planned. It's not something that willy-nilly happens there. A study by the American Medical Association showed that, on the average, every physician supports the employment of over 17 other people, generating $3.2 million of economic activity, and contributes $1.4 million to workers' wages and benefits, and generates $126,129. Now, this is the kind of stuff. If this is an amicus brief, but we'll put in a summary. I think I will attach this. The government acted arbitrarily and capriciously in failing to take into account any of these and other serious reliance issues. And this is one of the things to remember: reliance issues that the whole society itself depends on. And hopefully Bernie is driving this point home so people understand what is basically going on here and what the interest of the nation is. It's not the whole idea of getting almost a million people out. And its conclusion, for the going reason, and those in the respondent's brief, the judgment should be affirmed. And this is various people that signed it, including Heather Archon. Anyway, and various other people. And these are counsel for the amicus curiae: Jonathan S. Franklin, he's a counsel of record, and Heather J. Archon, she is from the association. So anyway, let's go back to the LA Times and get the West Coast perspective in here. Supreme Court conservative. This is what actually happened at the court on Tuesday. Sounds skeptical about the legality of, and they used the Obama era policy that allowed 700. It's more than 700,000 young people live and work in the U.S., suggesting that they may clear the way for the Trump administration to end it. The Chief Justice Roberts, whose vote is likely to be the deciding one, appears to agree with Trump's claim that the Obama program protecting the so-called agreements was legally questionable, undercutting the main argument used by lower courts and supporters of the program. The solicitor, who is Noel Francisco, urged the justices to toss the ruling from the three-judge panel and allow the president to wind down the program known as DECA. Now, what old DJ Trump has claimed he would work with Democrats to extend the program, well, that's probably won't happen. It'll be extended by the 2020 election, if at all. Anyway, Roberts suggested that the Trump administration may be on firm grounds in thinking that DECA was illegal. He noted that a similar and more far-reaching Obama immigration order protecting as many as 4 million immigrants who were parents of some of U.S. citizens and lawful residents had been blocked by the Fifth Circuit and then the Supreme Court in a tie vote. Do we need more of that? Roberts asked. Can't he just say that the basis on which I'm making this decision, the issue was an unusual test of presidential power as well as a legal struggle over the fate of hundreds of thousands of people. California, more than 1/4 of them live in California, 25%. Trump lost repeatedly before federal judges in California, New York, and in Washington. That is called the Second Supreme Court. 3 years ago, Roberts and the court's conservatives blocked a similar immigration order known as Deferred Act for Parents. That was just mentioned here. Ted Olson, who was Solicitor General under G.W. Bush, argued for the Dreamers, saying that ending the program would trigger an abrupt and substantial disruption in the life of over 700,000 people, including their families, employers, and communities, and even armed forces. Some of these people are in the armed forces. He's joined by Michael Mogan, said Trump's proposed repeal was founded on incorrect illegal premise that the DECA is unlawful. Roberts objected. He said Trump's lawyers had reason to at least doubt the legality of the program. It's not enough to say, look, I've got a decision from the FIP that tells me this is illegal, and it can be affirmed by the Supreme Court by an equally divided vote. No, Morgan replied, it's not enough to substantiate the decision, Your Honor, given the nature of this program and the interests at stake. And that's very important there. The whole thing was about work permits and those other benefits. Both administrations have said they are not going to deport people. So the deferred prosecution, deferred deportation, that's not what the focus of this policy was. He told Olson, I'm assuming this is Roberts, his comments echoed conservative circles who said that Obama's non-enforcement of policy violated immigration laws. And from Ruth Bader Ginsburg and Justice Breyer and Sotomayor and Justice Kagan sounded ready to affirm the ruling by the three judges who had blocked the repeal, but there's only 1, 2, 3, there's only 4 of them. They said the repeal should be reconsidered by the Trump administration because Elaine Duke, the acting Secretary of Homeland Security, wrote a repeal memo that suggested DECA was illegal based on the advice of Beauregard Sessions, who was the Attorney General at the time and resigned in disgrace. Now he wants to run for Senate again. We don't know how she would have responded if the clear recognition that there was nothing illegal about DECA. That's from Justice Ginsburg. Let me finish this up here. Anyway, Trump said that the court's victory would allow him to end the program, might put pressure on Congress to pass immigration legislation, but Republicans have not been very, as they say, active in any immigration. Last time there was bipartisan effort to do immigration was when the late John McCain, Senator McCain, was still alive. Since that time, we've had nothing but folly involving these situations here. I know we're going to get the new Supreme Court ready to let Trump end the Dreamers program. The conservative majority ready to support DJ Trump to end and do the deportation here, period. In another ruling here, Supreme Court cleared way for families of Sandy Hook victims to sue Remington, the gun manufacturer. So it's interesting how the court's going here. There are laws. In fact, this is one of the knocks they tried to knock Bernie because of these arms manufactured in Vermont, that there was laws to protect them from liability if they sell some fool a gun. Anyway, this is the Times article here on the DACA program. Shows a nice thing here. This is by Liptek, Adam Liptek, on the 12th of November. The Supreme Court's conservative majority appears ready on Tuesday to decide with the Trump administration. The court's liberal justice probed the administration's justification for ending the program there, and I assume there's it was a very considered decision. That is from Kavanaugh, saying the second set of justifications offered by the administration. That was in a memo there, and Gorsuch said he saw little point in requiring the administration to come forward with a better or more elaborate reason. What good would another 5 years of litigation over the adequacy of the explanation serve? And this is one of the problems we've faced with here now. The justice agreed that the young people who signed up for DECA was sympathetic, and that they and their families, schools, employers had relied upon them in good faith. No doubt about that. I hear a lot of facts, sympathy facts, and that you put out here, put out there. They speak to all of us. From Justice Roberts, he indicated the administration was on solid legal footing. That is just totally incorrect. He said the Supreme Court could rule in a humane way, minimizing the hardships participants in the program would face if it were ended. Well, that's maybe a compromise. That sometimes does happen. Anyway, Roberts added that both the Trump administration and Obama administration said they would not deport people eligible for the program, meaning that the practical question, if the program is ended, would their ability to work legally, obtain driver's license, and the like. The whole thing was about work authorization and these other benefits. The chief said both administrations have said they are not going to deport people. It'd be interesting to see whether they deport people or not. The program was announced in 2012 by Barack Obama. The arguments in the case, one of the more important, the court addressed this term. They do have some other important cases coming up there. In the past, Trump has praised the program's goal and suggested he wanted to preserve it. Does anybody really want to throw out good, educated people, accomplished young people? Well, he does. But as the court took it up on Tuesday, many of the people in DECA, no longer very young, are far from angels. To be eligible, applicants had to arrive before they turned 16, no older than 30, and have lived in the U.S. for at least the previous 5 years and were in school, or graduated from high school, or received a GED. Justice Breyer said many of the people in groups that indeed rely upon the program to continue indefinitely, judged by the supporting briefs filed. We talked about that, including the Department of Homeland Security versus Regents University of California. That was 18587. I believe that's one of them that we read to you. And we mentioned Dukes before, and the Solicitor General in California, who argued in favor of the program, disagreed, calling Nielsen's new rationale a boilerplate assertion. No doubt about that. And I think they're talking about, was this Nielsen that was there? And Theodore Olson, and he's an interesting fellow here. He's one of the DECA recipients. Said the memo allowed the administration to avoid taking a political heat on the issue. The administration did not want to make this on their own. That's why they put this Duke character in here as a setup person. And that was that. So into that. And Homeland Security around here. And we have Olson, and we have the N. Oh, no, excuse me, we're not there yet. And let's see, Trump administration argued that the program was unlawful. It's based on 2015 appeals court ruling. That's the fifth. That's sitting in New Orleans, but the decision concerned a different and much larger population. That was adults. Totally different argument there. Anyway, that does it for that. We've rounded up DECA, deferred likelihood program here. Let's move to the... Oops. Sorry about that. To the Washington Post here. We round this up here. And let's see, old Kushner, that's proposes creating live video feeds of the border wall construction to rally support. From the Post here, aides are counseling DJ Trump not to fire Mulvaney as the acting chief of staff changes course again. What did he do this time? He's been threatening for weeks to fire his chief of staff, but senior advisor counseled him to hold off on such a dramatic step and high-stakes impeachment probe. Trump has expressed particular anger over March 17th news conference Mulvaney gave, when he basically said quid pro quo. There was absolutely no quid pro quo. Quid pro quo. Mulvaney issued I see. It never had misconstrued his statement, but he said there was a quid pro quo. I'll get that right in a minute here. Get some water here too. Okay, let's see here. when he called off plans to file his lawsuit. This is Mulvaney. Mulvaney was going to file a very similar lawsuit to Bolton to actually ask the court for declaratory suit if he were required to go. And evidently this Mulvaney and the White House counsel have not gotten along either. I mean, there's a lot of things in Mulvaney's legal team had notified the court he planned to file his own lawsuit against the House, and he called that off. Charles Kupperman also has that lawsuit, declaratory type lawsuit. Anyway, Mulvaney's attorney noted in a filing on Tuesday that after further consideration, Mulvaney decided not to go to court at all. In fact, asking that his suit get dismissed without prejudice. Anyway, all of that. We have enough of this out here. None of it makes any sense. What we're seeing right now is not only disarray but also jaw-dropping inconvenience. That is from Chris Whipple, who has written a biography on the White House Chief of Staff. I knew it, Mr. Whipple either. See what we're doing all right there. Okay, leaked Stephen Miller. He's the Zionist fascist in the Trump administration. Showed Trump's point man on immigration, promoted white supremacy. This is from the Southern Poverty Law Center. Far-right ideas sought to promote those leading up to the 2016 campaign. 900 emails that Miller sent to Breitbart, written over a 15-month period. The report describes Miller's emails as overwhelmingly focused on race and immigration, characterized him as obsessed with ideas such as white genocide. That's interesting. In the wake of the news, at least Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez called for his resignation, didn't respond to requests there, and the White House press secretary didn't have anything to say either. Among the more damning emails exchanges highlighted in the Southern Poverty Law Center's report, it showed Miller directing Breitbart reporter to aggregate stories from white supremacist journal American Renaissance. Anyway, with stories that emphasize crimes committed by immigrants and non-whites. It apparently upset that Arizona removed the Confederate battle flag merchandise from Amazon, from its marketplace in the wake of the 2015 Charlotte church massacre. It repeatedly showed him promoting the Camp of Saints. That's a racist French novel popular among white nationalists. Miller was widely successful in molding race and immigrant-focused stories that appeared on Breitbart, and it repeatedly detailed how an email from Miller corresponded to a related article later appearing on the site. The email were provided by Kathy McHugh, a former Breitbart writer and editor who exchanged scores of messages with Miller during his transition from press aide, then Beauregard session to senior advisor to Trump. McHugh is aware of the risks she took in giving us the materials. That's from an investigative reporter there, Michael Hayden, who wrote the report. I think that was incredibly brave. The Southern Poverty Law Center shared with the Post 7 pages of emails that are directly cited in the report by Hayden. McHugh was familiar with his work, Hayden said, and mentioned having material she wanted to show him. Miller's probably at the highest of his power within the West Wing. As the report previously reported, Miller is one of Trump's longest tenured advisors, along with Kellyanne Conway, his daughter Ivanka, and Kirshner. Wow, hell of a note right there. I've never had any ambition of writing any kind of piece exposing Miller. I took him to be a part of the Trump culture, but not something that was in my lane. Looking at Miller's emails, change that, Hayden said. Well, that's good he did. Excerpted email shared with the Post show Miller drawing on Stories from outlets such as the anti-immigrant white nationalist site VDare and the conspiracy theory site Infowars and Jones's house there. Oh boy. This is actually more damning for the administration, at least in our opinion, than the whole Ukrainian affair. Lots of politics and liberal press have treated him like some sort of Wang bad boy, policy wog bad boy, and most romanticize him. Hayden said the most important takeaway for me is that Stephen Miller found a basis for his ideas on websites that traffic in hate and made clear in his emails. And that's one thing to remember, that some people should be attacking Miller much more than they do. Another story, someone here inflated their resume. That's not unusual. That's pretty common here. Ming Chow sports a suitable smile on the cover of Time magazine special edition with a swaggering headline reads, "We've changed the world, modern humanitarian in the digital world." The cover was amongst the photos Chang brought to an interview about countering violent extremism. In the State Department. She appeared on the Public Affairs show. She appeared on to discuss curbing the influence of the Islamic State in there. Time magazine's cover flashed on the stream. 5 minutes to interview. The show host suggested they look at some of the pictures you brought with you. Boko Haram's the other one there in Nigeria. And let's see what else she had going here. The fabricated, a fake cover. Time cover is just one of Chang's list of accomplishments and resume items that have come into question. NBC News investigated the 35-year-old. Last year, the Post reported the story of a 24-year-old former, a bunch of fakes. This is what's called a flippable. You talk about fakes there. Director for withdrew his name. That was John Radcliffe. He was a fake too. All these people are fakes, and what you do in what political consultants call a flippable, preferably before it affects you, you yell that the other side is putting out fake news or inflating their resumes, or just tell any type of fictional account of that person. Because if you lie, it's back to the old Goebbels thing, the bigger the lie, the better it is, and that influences people. But it only, now something like that, the Time magazine thing, that influences people don't know. But there's certain other things that people run rumors to influence people that they assume you could influence. I've had that happen to me many, many times, when in fact I had no influence over the individuals they targeted at all. That was just their misconception. Now, it goes on to say Chang did not complete a program at Harvard, but one very different from a prestigious institution, Masters of Business Administration. She attended an 8-week course known as Advanced Management course. Well, on resumes these days, it's you can put there that you attended. Didn't say you graduated from it. Chang claims she is an alumni of Harvard's Business School, who had addressed there's somebody else here. Yeah, well, I guess it is Chang, who addressed the Republican and Democratic National Convention. Similar bio appeared on a website, the think tank New America. Well, anyway, most of these people that inflate their resumes are harmless. They did find, however, a fellow that was literally CEO of a Radio Shack had inflated his resume, and of course he'd been the CEO of Radio Shack and worked there for many, many years. Chang also exaggerated the scope of her non-profit work. The report in public appearance, she claimed linking the world operated in dozens of countries, impact thousands of people, but organizations. Tax returns did not contain any information about an overseas project. It showed they had less than $300,000. Well, that was $300,000. They could have had the internet access and Twitter's out there. So anyway, in June of 2017, half a year after Chang debunked her cover story, they found that Trump had his own fake copy of a Time magazine. I mean, this is just this is more you usually say here. Let's see. We have the Fox poll here. We had it here. I probably don't have time for the others, but yeah, this is Louisiana. Fox exclusive here out of Louisiana. This is for WVUE for Fox 8. This is their runoff here. So the poll is 625. Shows that John Bell Edwards has a slim lead over Republican Eddie Rapini. 48 to 46. That's in this margin of less than a week. That race, incidentally, is on the 16th. There, 85% of those said they voted for Abraham in the primary, indicated they would vote for Rappaport, while 10% will back Edwards. Race come down to which candidate can get his voters to the poll, what we call a turnout election. 95% of those who voted for Edwards in the primary said they would back him again at 94%. When it comes down to who didn't vote in the primary and say they'd vote in the runoff, Edwards holds a 47% to 44%, just 3 points there. So it's a very, very close race here. 87% of Trump supporters votes from the 2016 said they would cast a vote, while 15% said they would cross the party lines to vote for Edwards. 4% of those were undecided. Well, he needs to get the undecided people in there and see where he can come out. Edwards, comes to gender. Men's prefer Rapone to 44. This is usually when women give Edwards a 9-point advantage. It happens in many, many races. On question of Edwards' jobs performance as governor, 54% across the state say they approve, while 38% disapprove. That's not bad at all. 88% of African American voters approve, while only 3% disapprove. Well, they don't know. This is Mason-Dixon polling and strategy for 6 Louisiana Gray TV stations, including the Fox News channel there. So that is their let's see if we can get the mama poll out. This is a national poll, very unusual. Focus on it. Otherwise, we'll give you just the raw numbers here. The mama poll. This is has Elizabeth Warren 18, has Buttigieg. This is for Iowa at 22. I haven't seen him ahead in any poll. Biden at 19 and Bernie at 13. Amy Klobuchar at 5. Buttigieg up by 3 according to the Mama poll. That's the only other one with the Mason-Dixon poll. Now, I don't know. We have quickly here another, it'd be an older Iowa poll here. Yeah, we have some Wisconsin. No. We may not have anything for Iowa. This is a Quinnipiac poll, had Warren up by 3. So pretty much that Warren has 20, Buttigieg has 19, Biden has 15, Bernie has 17. So evidently these are 2 polls, one on the 6th and one on Monday, or Tuesday actually. So Buttigieg is moving ahead in Iowa according to these 2 polls. Here it puts him up by 3. So now he's up there with Liz Warren and Bernie Sanders and Biden. They were pretty much, well, Warren and Biden 18-19. That's together. Then Buttigieg. So it's basically a freeway tie. And then here comes Sanders, and here comes Amy Klobuchar. All this could change. There's no doubt about that. One of the things that happens around here when things change. Let's see if we can. I'm not sure we're going to get the Mama poll out here. We'll probably have to bring it up another day when we can get it up for whatever reason it is there. This Quinnipiac poll, I think we reported this, and this was on, it was earlier, it was on the 11th here, but this is New Hampshire. So we're starting to see some polling there. Where does Buttigieg go? Well, we don't know. And will that change? Well, we'll be watching that very, very closely. According to the recent polls, we can't find any effect at all for the Michael Bloomberg. But it's too early. He really hasn't got his advertising out here and got things rolling. So we'll see. And this has been the Decker episode on the 13th of August 2013. Boston Red and Jared Pippin Memorial broadcast booth, as we usually are. Good day.